Hey guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Ashers, and this is
Hello.
Pato. How was your weekend?
My weekend was interesting, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. Friday I had because obviously we're still going to talk about the hard shit for a while.
Sure.
Uh, but yeah, Friday I had I was in the hospital for 8 hours getting an angiogram, and that's when they stick a camera in one of your arteries and follow it up into your heart.
Awesome.
Yeah, I know. So that was 8 hours. That was like 2 hours of prep. Um, an hour for the procedure and then 5 fucking hours in recovery. And that was not fun. And that was also kind of like a wake up call to the fact that, like, yeah, when I have open heart surgery, like that's gonna be, I'm just gonna like go to sleep and someone's gonna do it. I'm gonna wake up and it's gonna be done. It's like almost the most perfect way in the world to have anything happen,
Sure.
while you're asleep. But it's gonna be, then I'm gonna be in the hospital for a week before I can even go home. You know what I mean? And like just being stuck in that fucking room. Um, I made a joke on Twitter that it was kind of like being in jail, and I should know because I'm someone that's been in jail from
Been
time
in
to
jail?
time. So like, yeah, it was like being in jail. It totally fucking blew. I was by myself. I had like 4 TV channels to pick from. Um, so whatever though. That was Friday. Saturday, went and saw Ghostbusters Afterlife, which, seeing as how this is a paranormal podcast, I will spend 30 seconds talking about that. It was pretty good. It was, I don't want to start a fucking internet flame war, but it was definitely, I enjoyed it better than the all female Ghostbusters movie that came out a couple years ago. Ghostbusters has long since been like the original Ghostbusters. It's probably like one of my favorite movies of all time. I had it on a tape growing up, and I used to watch it over and over and over again. It
Yeah.
kind of had the perfect combination of like it was a horror movie, and it was a comedy, and it was just kind of everything rolled into one. Um, but this one was pretty good. Actually, I'd say I don't want to spoil too much of it, but I think kind of like the worst parts of it were when they tried to do too much of a wink and a nod back to the original franchise. I think it stood pretty strongly on its own as something new, and that what hurt it more than anything were kind of at the end when they try to connect it to the previous movies. But I won't say too much more.
Okay.
And then what else did I do this weekend? I watched the Alanis Morissette documentary, which like
All right.
you were like 4 years old when that album came out. You have no, do you even know who Alanis Morissette is, or like
Yeah.
have any kind of? All right. So me and my wife watched that and had kind of related to it in different ways because it came out when we were both like freshman year in high school, and for her it was this like angry woman empowering album that was super popular at the time. And for me, it was like, this template of women to be attracted to later on in life. Like I had a bigger crush on Alanis Morissette than I did like anyone on Baywatch. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I totally had the hots for like these weird angry artist girls, um, which probably ended up doing me more damage than if I had just been obsessed with like Pamela Anderson. But yeah, so I watched that and that was pretty good. And one more thing while I'm talking about my weekend before we get to CryptidCon, because of course I have a million and one questions to ask about that.
Sure.
Is that I noticed last episode I talked a lot about the upcoming surgery and what I'm going through. And the one thing that I did not do is thank my wife for everything that she's done so far and everything that she will inevitably have to do in the future. So she's been very supportive during all of this. And I do want to take a minute to thank her and say thank you, baby, because this is a lot for all of us. And she's been cool, and she's been my driver and everything. And, she's given me a lot more than rides. But no, I appreciate all the things she's done for me. And I just wanted to say that in a public forum before she steals all my fentanyl. So that's it.
Stop it.
How was, which since we last recorded, I've been on fentanyl twice, and I totally get why people die from that shit. It is awesome.
Oh,
Um, But there, in case you were
Don't,
wondering,
don't tell the listeners to do fentanyl.
I'm not. I'm not. I'm not, because the more they do, the less there is for me. I think y'all. I think y'all should stay the fuck away from fentanyl, because I'm gonna want all the fentanyl when this shit's over. No, dude, it's pretty sweet. People don't flush their lives away for bad drugs.
That's true.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I've never smoked crack proper. Um,
Oh my God.
I had to add that caveat, but I can imagine that if it's gonna make you, lose your house, it's got to be pretty fucking good, man. And I could verify that fentanyl is definitely in that realm. You know, I get why Prince. I get why I got the better of Prince, man. He was motherfucking Prince, but even Prince was unable to resist its charms. So,
did he die from fentanyl? I don't know.
yeah, he did, unfortunately.
Okay. I didn't know that. Well, so the $1 million question that I keep getting asked is, do you have a date yet? Do we have a date?
Well, oh God, here we go with the time travel bullshit again. By the time this airs, I will. I am spending all day Wednesday at Northwestern Hospital in downtown Chicago, getting yet another echocardiogram, meeting with yet another cardiologist, but more importantly, meeting with a surgeon. And when I meet with the surgeon, he is going to come up with a definitive plan of action. There's no more talking. Now it's time to fuck. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And Wednesday, we are fucking at Northwestern. So we're going to set a definite plan of action, and then hopefully definitely a date. And if a date isn't set on Wednesday, it's only because he's got to move some shit around, and hopefully get set by Friday. But yeah, that is like what, trust me, that is the fucking $1 million question that's on everyone's mind. When the fuck is this thing happening?
Sure.
So we should find that out. When you're listening to this, I probably know already.
so check your social medias.
Yes.
When we know, you guys will know. So
I don't know. So this is thing. So I've talked about this on Twitter a lot, because I talk about everything on Twitter a lot. I've made a couple Instagram posts. I have not talked about this on Facebook, and you know how I kind of separate my social media accounts,
sure,
to where there's certain audiences for each. And this is still not Facebook public, because then it's like everybody in his Boy Scout troop, it's everybody at school, it's all my old coworkers, it's that chick that I fingered when I was 24 years old. It's like fucking literally everybody. And I'm not about to like deal with that level of just people reaching out to ask questions and then say, if you need anything, let me know. Although I am putting motherfuckers to work. So if you come at me with that, if you need anything, let me know shit, I will have you come over and walk my dogs. So watch your fucking mouth. But yeah, I mean, you know me. I've been podcasting for the past 5 years. I'm not exactly like a fucking reserved guy, but I think the more serious this starts to get, and the more closer we get to fuck time, the less you'll probably see me on social media talking about it too much. I mean, obviously you're always going to be in the loop because you're fucking you, but like, I don't know, go on the Weird Wednesday Twitter account and be like, all right, everybody, fucking, December 2nd at 7 a.m. This is going
time.
Right. So, I don't know. I'm still not convinced that this whole thing isn't the byproduct of some fucking witch ex-girlfriend of mine. Like, the less people know about the specifics of the surgery, the better. I don't need people holding fucking anti-surgery black masses to try to fucking have me die on the table or something. You know what I mean? I'm not, you know how goofy I am.
Are you going to name drop, or we don't get to know who this mystery woman is?
I don't want to give them power. No, I don't even know if they fucking have anything to do with this, but I'm just saying. I'm gonna play this one a little close to the chest when it comes down to it. But yeah, there'll be updates. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about me.
Okay. That's what.
So how was CryptidCon? Was the Adderall flowing?
Well, you know how it goes at the CryptidCon. I mean, I'm not gonna say it wasn't bad. Of course, it was wonderful to see all the people that I love and cherish and hold dear in my heart. But it wasn't as great as I think it should have been.
Oh, okay.
And was not very cool. So like, we went the first night, and we went to the meet and greet or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked in. So at first I walk in, and immediately I walk in the door, and there's fucking Jonathan Dodd. And like, I'm hanging out with him for a minute. He's staying at the hotel. Jonathan Dodd, he does a bunch of artwork. He does amazing artwork, actually. Check him out. Jonathan Dodd draws. But I run into him, and we say hi or whatever. We hug it out, and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go to this meet and greet. And he's like, meet and greet. I told him it was something that was specific to us, as because we got the VIP tickets or whatever. And he's like, oh. So we would go to the meet and greet, and we show up. I didn't know fucking anybody that was there. I didn't recognize any of these people. It's supposed to be with, like, the speakers and things like that. I don't know who the fuck any of them were. And I'm like, oh. So me and Ann get there. It's super fucking lame, right? And I'm like, man, this kind of sucks. So I texted fucking Dodd, and I was like, hey, buddy, we found the meet and greet area. You should come join us. And he's like, oh. So we went and found him, and we snuck him into the meet and greet. And it got a little more interesting then. I'm like, I need you to tell me who these people are. And he's like, he's like, I think that guy is from Mountain Monsters, but I don't know. I'm like, okay, all right. So, which of course, they were from Mountain Monsters. They were wearing fucking overalls and camo. Like, yeah, that huge beards. That was definitely the guys. But anyway, and then we went back to the hype house. Then we drank a lot and went to bed too late, and woke up too early. And gosh, me and Ann, we were probably about. I mean, I think we were like 3 hours late to the con itself. And so, we get there, but
Just because of a hangover?
well, not just because of hangover. I'll tell you off the air, but
Someone was getting fucked?
no,
Oh.
no, I'll tell you
All
off
right.
the air.
All right.
It's fine. So, but we get there, and then it was just basically, I mean, my gosh. So the way that this whole place was set up, I mean, it was set up, there were 3 rooms, right, that were set up
Mm-hmm.
for vendors. And so, it's at a hotel, so typical convention. But like the one room that was the paddock room area, which I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about, is basically where all of our friends were, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty much, where the highlight, this is where you want to hang out, at the paddock room. The paddock room was like in a weird fucking spot, and it was like it was down this long hallway. I mean, this hallway, it was like 5 miles long. It was so long. Okay, it wasn't 5 miles, but it was ridiculous. It was weird. And it was just kind of away. It was like way away from everything else. And then it was like 10 degrees hotter in there for some reason. And like it was very odd. So like, we get there, and it took us about a good 3 hours to walk the whole place, to see all the vendors. And then again, of course, I'm talking to everybody that I know. Some people I hadn't met yet. There were some new faces that I hadn't had the chance to meet, but I've talked to and been, mutuals with online for a long time. And, so I talked to them for a bit or whatever. And then we got into the speakers. We went, and I only saw 2 of the, presentations. I saw Matt Moneymaker talk about video evidence, when she talked about the Matilda footage. I don't know who all here is familiar with the Matilda footage. And back in the day, back in the Wee Wednesday days, back when Ivy was the co-host of the show, we covered Bigfoot, and one of the things that we talked about was the Matilda footage. We talked about the Erickson project, which was the Bigfoot genome
The
sequencing
cloning thing, yeah.
right? And the Matilda footage was kind of a part of that. So, I mean, I was excited because, I'll be honest with you, the Matilda footage, that's one of my favorites. A lot of people think it's fake. But it's one of my favorite things in the world. But he just didn't really deliver. And Matt Moneymaker, he's like the man. He's like the man, and he's not really the man. I don't know why he is on TV and is very popular. Anyway, then we watch Ron Moorhead. Ron, if you don't know who Ron Moorhead is, definitely check him out. He's the man who recorded the famous Sierra sounds, which you've heard. Even if you say you haven't heard them, you've heard them. If you're listening to the show, you've heard them. If not, go listen to it. I mean, go listen. And Ron Moorhead has some very interesting theories on Bigfoot as kind of this weird interdimensional type creature. But he kind of touches on quantum mechanics and things like that, which is really more up my that's kind of more up my alley. So, but he was a pleasure. He was awesome. I got to talk to him. He was really great to talk to. Um, that was fine. And then just regular con stuff. I mean, they did the podcasters panel, which I was
Spill it.
going to
Spill it.
crash.
Spill the tea. Spill the tea.
Well, I really don't know because I'll tell you, me and Ann left for a while, because this girl there was this girl who I've talked to on social media for like 2 years. I've never met her before, and she just randomly messages me and is like, "Hey, I'm gonna come to CryptidCon with you guys and stay at your hype house." And I'm like, "Cool." She's not really into cryptids, but she came, and when she showed up, she started telling us about Cocaine Bear, which I'd never heard of before. And so I don't know if you guys know about Cocaine Bear. I'm sure you've seen my pictures, but Cocaine Bear, there's this bear that like found a duffel bag with like 75 grand of cocaine in it and ate it. And then it went on a fucking rampage from Nashville, Tennessee to Kentucky. And then its heart exploded. It overdosed on cocaine. And so,
man, if that doesn't hit a little close to home for me right now, holy shit! All right, point taken, Andrews.
Yeah, well,
no,
true story. So this he died of was overdose or whatever. And we went and saw Cocaine Bear. So we left CryptidCon for a little bit to go do that, and then we went out to dinner, and we came back about an hour late to the podcasters panel. But it was really lame. I can tell you that. Not because. I mean, just from what we saw, maybe we had missed the exciting parts, but from what I understand, some of the podcasters were even unhappy because some people were kind of bogarting the time, which I definitely see, from what I saw could have been occurring the whole time, and things like that. So, as a matter of fact, Sarah Cooper from the American Snallygaster Museum and Manic Pixie Dream Ghouls, she got up and left. So,
wow.
yeah. Yeah. So there was that. So anyway, but it was crazy. I mean, day one was just so fast. It was like, first I got to do this and I have to go do that and I have to go to that and I have to go to that. I mean, there was so much to do and see and look at, so many people to talk to, that, I mean, realistically this should be a 3-day event. And even like Sunday was a shorter day. Saturday was 9 to 9. And then Sunday was 10 to 5. And so, it went by way too quick. I feel like I didn't get to see my friends as much. And I really didn't. Get to hang out with anybody because then like, Saturday came and went and, then we all went out. We had a good time, afterwards, of course. And then Sunday came and I had to film all day because I hadn't filmed anything on Saturday. I wouldn't have been able to anyway. There was at over 1,000 people. I mean, it was so busy. I wouldn't have been able to because I don't want to keep up. A lot of the people that I wanted to film are people that have tables and things like that, and I don't want to keep them from their fans or whoever making a sale. But Sunday ended up a lot better. I mean, Sunday I got to walk around. I filmed a lot more. I talked to a lot more people. Made some really good connections with people. I made a couple of new best friends, so that's good. And then we went home. So there's no fun crazy stories or anything like that. It was just it was a convention. I mean, nothing groundbreaking about it, but I definitely have some suggestions and things that I think that they could do better. Should people go? Absolutely, you should go, but you need to anticipate. If you want to do the things, you need to anticipate being there all weekend long. And even then, you might not even have the time to squeeze it all in. So, and you have to stop and see Cocaine Bear while you're in Lexington. So there's that. That was CryptidCon.
All right.
Questions, comments, concerns?
No, I heard that, I feel like that's always a good complaint because I do the, gaming conventions a lot, and I was a Comic-Con nerd, and I was a horror. I used to go to Fangoria Weekend of Horrors a lot when I was younger. And yeah, I mean, I think an overabundance of things to do and see is definitely a good thing. I think sometimes too many vendors is you got to find the right balance between entertainment and vendors. Because if all it is vendors, then it's like, okay, great, I just came here to shop the whole fucking time.
And
And
I
and
mean, it
that
kind of was. Well, I mean, no, they had speakers about every 2 hours, and then those speakers got about an hour time slot.
yeah.
And so, it wasn't like they didn't have presentations. It's just that I felt like they weren't done very well. So, like, one thing I'd mentioned, because we had did this, which it'll be premiering this Friday on the Bigfoot Society podcast. We did this Cryptid Con highlights kind of show.
Mhm.
And Pat, I think you listened in on it. You were
Yeah, I actually did. I was playing Pokemon Diamond or whatever the whole fucking
Ooh,
time.
stop
So
it.
I was listening. Then I listened to everything. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and so, like, a couple of the things, that we had talked about was about, like, one thing that I mentioned was that it was very Sasquatch heavy. And it's not Bigfoot Con, it's Cryptid Con. Like, there wasn't a lot of other cryptid representation in the presentations. And maybe it's just because, like, their big people that they had this year were the Finding Bigfoot people and mountain monsters, which,
Mhm.
I mean, realistically, I would have rather seen actual researchers and not just TV personalities. But maybe that's just coming from me. I mean, maybe other people go there because they want to see the TV personalities. I don't know. Because again, my favorite was seeing Ron Moorhead, who, oh, he's been on TV, sure, but he doesn't do it because of that. He does it because he's a researcher. You know what I mean? And so and then, again, I would have rather had variety and the types of creatures that were being discussed. And, one guy even kind of messed up and was like, "Oh, you guys are here for, everybody's here for Sasquatch, and that's great." And it's like, no, everybody's not here for Sasquatch, sir. Like, that's not guys, I love Bigfoot. I really do. But, there's more to cryptozoology than just Bigfoot. And I think that all of that is just equally, I've said it before, Bigfoot's really overrated. So it's almost the only thing anybody in this community talks about. And that's, really, really unfortunate. But that and then, like I said, there really wasn't anything for kids to do, but there was a lot of fucking kids there. And, like, if you really want to make an impact on this community, going forward, then you really want to get the kids involved. There's no reason not to make something interactive for the children. There weren't workshops or anything like that. I mean, you had people at their individual booths that were, demonstrating and putting things together and stuff like that, but not really anything crazy or, too fun. I mean, what's his name? Oh God, what's his name? So this guy Johnny, he has the Back of the Cereal Box podcast. He was over there doing magic tricks, which is great. We had Krampus dressed up for the, Dream Cool's booth. I mean, some people had different things, but it wasn't, I don't know. Like I said, it just to feel like there should have been a lot more to it than just, here, see these TV personalities and then go buy some shit. But that's just me.
Right. Well, not to be a dick about it, but what do you? It's a whole entire convention based upon, I don't want to say shit that isn't real, but like, you know, like what do you think was gonna happen? Like, no one's gonna show up with a fucking Bigfoot in chains. Like, it's no one's gonna debut any kind of like new information that was peer reviewed and certifiable is not going to be debuted at one of these conventions. The most you're going to get out of the speakers is information and theories that you've already heard about online, evidence that you've already seen. No one's going to debut anything new at this, right? This is going to be, when I was reading that book about the spooks and disinformation campaign, the kind of basis of our Academy Relation episode, they talk a lot about the early MUFON conventions and how that really, what really impressed me about those gatherings was that was a pre-internet era. And those conventions really kind of took on a different importance in the community than I think these conventions have now. Back then, that was the only way you were going to get a lot of these people together. The only way you were going to, if you wrote a zine or you wrote a self-published book, it was the only way you were going to get copies in people's hands. Okay. One of the only ways. I mean, you still had mail order and shit, right? But like in a pre-internet era, and I think this is something even Tobias might have said when we had him on the People That Make Stuff, or the interview we did with him for this show. I feel like this is something that he's echoed before too, is that conventions kind of don't have the same place in the community that they used to. And they used to be really vital and really like groundbreaking, and you know, there was a lot of thought leadership, and there was a lot of like, you know, education and stuff going on. And now it's just fucking selling t-shirts and shit, you know. And you know, and if when there's even too much of people selling shit, that even that becomes overwhelming, because you're not going there with $3,000 to spend on fucking stuffed
Right.
animals. You know what I mean? Like, so I think what I'm hearing from you, and this is something that you guys even echoed last night as well, is that there was a general dissatisfaction with it. Not that I'm saying it was a bust or anything. I ain't trying to yuck other people's yum just because I was getting a fucking angiogram at the time.
Oh no, and it definitely wasn't a bust. Yeah, I mean,
no. But it just seems like there is an opportunity here for you guys to be the change that you want to see. And I think that you know, I'm a 40-year-old punk rocker, so I am 100% DIY through and through. And I said this before, motherfucker, I live in Chicago. Like, let's do our own convention, and let's do it the way you want to do it, with the way you want to see it represented, and let's see how well it does, and let's see if people come to it, and let's see if you get the right types of speakers and the right types of panels. You know what I mean? With people that give the right types of penetration.
Wow.
I'm on a roll.
Well, now that's a con I can get behind.
I mean, hey, do you know that they do AVN and like G3 at the same time?
No.
Yeah, you know what G3 is, right? The gaming convention or
Yeah.
whatever. They for the longest time in Vegas, they would have both of those at the same time.
In the same
You'd have all the well, I mean, Vegas, it might be across the fucking whatever.
Sure.
But my point is that they purposely did that because you wanted all the nerds and all the porn stars together at the same time, and you people would get passes for both, and they go back and forth. So, yeah, I mean, definitely we could do a you know, Exotica rip off and do a Cryptid rip off at the same place at the same time.
You know, I'm not gonna lie, like my biggest gripe about it, honestly, is just that I didn't get to see my friends very much, because like they were so busy with all of the people that they're selling shit to, which I'm happy about that.
Right.
You know, and then I was also so busy trying to buy other people's stuff. And you know, which is great, but I feel like that's the part that was kind of missing this go round compared to others, because for me, you know, this is an opportunity to go and hang out with my friends and hang out with a community that I feel like I really belong in. I mean, now don't get me wrong, I talk to plenty of people, plenty of other people, you know, outside of my regular circle, and people that weren't vendors, just regular people that were there attending, you know, and I got some very interesting stories. Some guy, you know, told myself and Alex Pedikov about you know, his champ sighting, and that was really cool, you know. And you know, you got these people that show you pictures and things like that, which is great. And then kind of how I explained it on the panel last night is like, you would be having one conversation with one person, somebody overhears it, and then they join the conversation, then your one person you were talking to walks away, but you're still talking to this person, and then somebody else joins in, you know, and you would kind of get stuck in like these little like pockets of the conversation for a good couple of hours. And it wasn't, you know, like it was a bad thing, it was interesting. But again, you know, my biggest issue was that, you know, I didn't get to see my friends, and I didn't really get to feel like I participated in anything extra. Like I'll tell you right now, it was not worth it to pay $100 for these tickets that we got. That was just not.
Yeah.
That there was no extra. I mean, we were supposed to get like preferred seating during the presentations, but the rooms were. I mean, I get the rooms were too small. I mean, you'd think they could like count out how many of these VIP tickets they sold and at least set up that many chairs. That didn't happen, or people were just taking them. I don't know. It's not like anybody was checking, you know. And that was really it. We didn't get any discounts. You know, there was no. I mean, there was no anything extra. So, you know, that was kind of lousy, but you know, I mean, those are my biggest things. And again, I feel like there should be another day, because they did have an overwhelming amount of vendors and things like that. And I mean, you know, and you say vendors, it's not just like people that make and sell art, like they're podcasters, they're content creators, they're authors, they're documentary filmmakers, you know what I mean? And so you want to take your time with those people and be able to talk with them. And they also want to do the same thing, but you get burnt out really easily and really quickly because you're doing this and you only have a very finite amount of time to do it. And you're just like, and I wasn't even vending, and I had people coming up to me. Oh, hey, you're Ashers. Oh, hey, I follow you on social media. I listen to your show. I can't wait for your documentary. This and the other. And I didn't even have a table, right? And I know how it felt because I would talk to them, and it was just very much like, oh, hey, thanks, great. I'm glad you like the stuff. I got to go buy. And that felt really bad. That did not feel good, man. That felt really bad. And so, I didn't like that part. So I agree. And I think having another day, because the only time it really started to slow down finally was like the last 2 hours, of the whole event. And then that was, and then it was okay. So, but that's just what I have to say about it. Again, it was a great time. I'm definitely going to go next year. But I like Cryptid Bash better. I like Braxy Bazaar better, and Braxy Bazaar was small. So I don't know, but maybe we'll get together. We were talking about it. Maybe we'll get together with the organizers and talk about, what kinds of things we would like to see there, and maybe they'll take
your own.
The feedback.
Do your own.
I keep telling everybody that you want to do one, so
do one in Chicago. It's a big. I mean, come on,
they're all here for it. So you need to get the surgery done and heal, and then we need to plan this out. So soon to be announced. On Wednesdays we talk weird on the weekend or something like that. I don't know. We'll call it something. I don't know. Fucking give us your name suggestions. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
I think we keep our name far, far away from it, and we come up with a neutral third party name for it, and that way people don't like fucking shit on it just because they think that it's ours. You know what I mean?
Why would they shit on it? Because why would?
I'm just saying,
people don't hate us. I don't. Okay. I don't know.
The internet, of course, somebody hates us. I would just say, I don't know. We'll worry about it later.
Anyway, so that was my weekend. That's what I did this weekend.
Nice.
So very, very exciting stuff. Let's get into some news. You want to hear some news?
I would love to.
Some cool news. I sent you a video earlier, and I hope you saw it.
Oh yeah, the ghost dog.
Yeah, there's video came out of a ghost dog running around, someone's yard with their dog, like playing with their dog. And, I'm usually not crazy about these ghost videos. I'll be honest with you. That is like the last thing in the world that I care to look at. Because usually it's just, a speck of dust or something, some fog or some shit. It's not anything. It's usually not anything. But I don't know what to think about this one. Pat, what do you? And of course, the video's down in the description if you want to go watch it real quick, and come back before we talk about it. I mean, there's going to be mass spoilers. The spoiler alert. I guess.
Right. It. You know what? It seems there's the one thing that I don't know the rules of ghosts.
Sure.
But there's scenes where the dog is kind of like jumping up towards the ghost dog. And they're meeting each other. You know what I mean? Like I see my dogs do that where they're like not like lunge at each other because that makes it sound real violent, but it's playful.
And it is a very playful. Even like the real dog is happy. It looks like.
Yeah, but when the way they connect like that, it does seem like it's physically meeting something.
Yeah.
Like it's jumping and it's bumping into something that's kind of pushing it back and meeting it in midair. So I don't know if ghosts are supposed to be like ethereal where they pass through it or something. Like once again, I don't know the rules. But the way I saw it made me think that maybe that was some kind of visual effect to like fade out the other.
Sure.
There was 2 dogs in that video and the other one was kind of like faded out. But I have dogs. I have 2 of them. And they do weird shit, and they run around seemingly in circles chasing themselves. And it also made me think, fuck, maybe that's what my dogs are doing out there. Is chasing other ghost dogs.
playing with the ghost dog. At one point in the video, so like when the video starts, like you see kind of just like a general shape, right? And you're like, oh, okay. And then, they kind of zoom past and they zoom off camera, the dog and in the shape, zoom off camera, and then they come back around, and like while it's kind of coming more into focus, you kind of start seeing more and more detail of it. And there's like one shot in particular where you can see like a dog. Like to me, I'm like, well, that's just another dog. It just looks like it just straight up looks like another dog. But then of course it kind of fades out again. You don't really see it in complete, dog form. It just looks definitely like it's there, but it's not there. So I don't know. I mean, of course, could it be a video effect? Absolutely, anything can. It's 2021. But if it's not a video effect, I have no other worldly explanation for it unless we have translucent dogs now, and I don't think we've discovered those yet. So new cryptid, maybe, I don't know. I was gonna hold off and talk about this after, because of course people have sent me this video over and over again. They want to know what I think about it. I was going to talk about when we revisited the Dog Man, but because some people are like, oh, it's a dog man. That's not a dog man. That's not what a dog man is. A dog man is not a ghost dog. So there's that. That's my opinion. That's my expert opinion on the matter. But it's I think it definitely could be something. I think I have to dig into it a little bit more. But I'd like to see where the video originated from. I mean, if we find out that like the homeowner, the dog owner, whatever, is some college special effects student, like, then yeah, it's probably
Right.
bullshit. So
Yeah, I think you would definitely need some context for that video.
right.
Like what's the history been of that house?
Sure.
The area, are the neighbors seeing stuff? Is there reports of dead chickens down the road or some shit like
Did
that?
they lose a
'Cause
dog recently? I mean, what,
is it an albino wolf? Is it something that's just that white? Because it is kind of like, you know what I mean?
Well, like
Let-
I said, at one point in the video, it almost looks like it takes complete shape, and like you can see it, and it's like, oh, okay, that's just a really bad. It's just bad camera quality. It's not really able to focus on it for whatever reason, But I don't necessarily think so, just because of the way it moves and whatever. I mean, again, I encourage you guys, go watch the video.
Let us know what you think.
Yeah, Jinx. So the ghost dog. There's that. Another one that I wanted to talk about real quick is there was this guy in India who got into a motorcycle accident, and he was taken to the hospital, and he was pretty much announced dead on arrival, and they put him in the morgue freezer. 6 hours later, when his family came to claim his body and whatnot, there were signs of movement, and turns out he wasn't dead. He wasn't actually dead. But the doctors there insist. I mean, he was checked out by multiple doctors and a medical examiner. They were getting ready to sign off on an autopsy, because the man was dead. And that's what the doctors say. They insist that it's not negligence because he had no heartbeat and no signs of life. The man right now he's in a coma. He hasn't completely woken up. He's in coma. He hasn't woken up yet. But he is still in the hospital, and he is still, as of right now, alive, and the family is pissed off. Very interesting. That's something again that Ivy and I covered on the show, and I don't remember. It might have been when we talked about death, but I don't remember exactly when it was. But we've talked about these instances of people being declared dead and getting back up again. I mean, the one that always sticks out in my mind, and I think maybe it happened in Brazil, because everything fucking happens in Brazil. I swear to God.
Some
But
shithole country.
right. I mean, if it's weird, it's in Brazil. I promise you. But a little boy died, and their practices there is that they'll leave the body in the home to let family members come and have the viewing. And so he's at home. They're doing their viewing thing. The little boy sat up and asked for a glass of water, and then laid back down and died again. They rushed him to the hospital, and he was dead. There's no signs of life. There's no explanation for that whatsoever.
Mm.
And things like this happen a lot. Now, some people continue to live, they wake up and they live, or some people again wake up in the morgue, things like that. I read a short Stephen King novel about a guy who was awake, sort of, kind of. But he was under in the autopsy, room, getting ready to be sliced open, and he's like trying to show them signs that he's awake at all, and he's just listening to the conversations and kind of grappling with the fact that, if he's not dead, he is going to die, or maybe he is dead, and this is what death is now. But he woke up and it was great. So I think that's always interesting. Pat, what do you think about people that wake up from the dead?
That's why I'm getting cremated.
Why?
So that fucking I'm gone. You know what I mean? None of that shit. None accidentally getting buried alive. Nothing. Just you know.
So you'd rather get burned alive instead?
I guess. Well, I don't know. Like,
Is that better? I mean, I don't know.
at least I don't know. Well, it sucks either way.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
I don't know, man. It's some heavy shit, you know.
No, yeah, that's I mean, death is something that's really, really difficult for a lot of people to talk about. We don't know what it's like to die. And so when we're faced with our own mortality, in any sense of the word, and something like this definitely makes you think about it. Because what if that is the reality? What if you die, but you don't really die and you're still there in your body, but you can't control your body anymore? And different things like that. So, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants to wake up at their own funeral. Nobody wants to wake up in an autopsy room. Nobody wants that type of thing. But I don't know. It's always interesting and always weird to hear these stories happen. I mean, death is a natural part of life. It happens. We all die. We're all going to die. You're going to die. I'm going to die, and it's just going to happen. And so, but I have talked to people. That is something that I've kind of dipped my toe into researching topics on. Is the moments leading up to death for people and kind of how they interact with the world around them. And it mostly started for me when my grandmother had some really weird experiences right before she died. And I don't know. It's a weird fascination. But I also have people that I like to talk to, people who have clinically died and been resuscitated. And a lot of them say it's just the same thing. Nothing happens. Nothing. And as kind of weird as that is, I find that extremely comforting. So,
Yeah, I mean, okay. So I guess we'll turn this into a conversation. I don't just kind of going through what I'm going through right now. You would think that that death or the idea of afterlife or the extent of the afterlife is something that I would have spent a lot of time worrying about or focusing on, and it never has been. I'm definitely a religious person by nature, but I don't think that the idea of there being an afterlife is anything that I've clinged on to too strongly or spent too much time worrying about. Because at that point, there's nothing you can do about it one way or the other. I think that there's enough reasons to go through our current life now and not be a fucking jagoff, that I don't do it because I'm worried about going to heaven or hell or anything like that. Whether or not, when I expire, whether or not the lights go out and that's all there is to it, or I get reborn as somebody else, or I go to the Pleiades, you know what I mean? Like, whatever happens, is there's probably very little I can do about it right now. So I'm not going to sweat that. You know what I mean?
no, and I think that's a very smart way to do it. I mean, because like you said, you can't, I mean, why worry about it? There's no reason to.
Right. Yeah, I'm more worried about making sure my alarm's set for tomorrow morning, or that my kids' fucking lunch is packed for school on
Right.
Monday. Like that's just kind of what occupies my mind now. I think that that's something that, as children, and this is as a parent, you kind of, I'm sure you pick up on this. There's so much stuff that, like, you come across as a kid for the first time, and depending on how you process it kind of defines your relationship with it for the rest of your life. Like, do you know what anal retentive really means?
No.
Okay, so anal retentive, it's a term that we hear a lot, and we kind of know what it means when you hear that somebody's anal retentive. They're a control freak, right? And that's because when a baby or toddler learns to hold their shit in, it's such a monumental, like, thing in some toddlers' lives that they never move past it, right? Because as infants and toddlers are growing up, they kind of just shit. And then they're covered in shit and they don't like it and they cry and blah blah blah. But at some point they realize, wait a minute, I can hold it in. And it's kind of the first form of control that they learn. So anal retentive people are people that learned that aspect of control and it really defined the rest of their shit moving forward, right? And that's why they're control freaks. They're anal retentive. You know, they're holding on to that feeling of power that they got the first time they learned to hold in their bowel movement. And I feel like the same thing kind of applies to something like life after death, right? The first time that a child conceptualizes the fact that they're going to die and that something or nothing is going to happen afterwards, that's a big moment in a human being's development. And some people move past it and some people don't. The people that don't move past it spend the rest of their life obsessed with this idea of what happens when I die. Where do I go? Am I going to heaven? Am I going to hell? This is what this belief system says. This is what that belief system says. And it not maybe doesn't completely define their life, but definitely puts it on a certain trajectory. And I've just never been like that. Like whatever fucking is going to happen, whatever, man.
Yeah.
You know, I definitely have my preferences, but yeah, I'm not gonna lose sleep over it, and I'm not gonna freak the fuck out because I can hold my poo in. You know, there's other things that I believe require my attention, like
Yeah.
breasts. You know, which is
Sure.
obviously anyone that listens to this show knows the part of my development that I've been hung up on. So, but to each their own.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's, I mean, the reason why it's not a good thing, I don't think you should sit here and focus on death or anything like that. But like, one thing that happens when people die is like you don't plan for it, like because it's an uncomfortable conversation to have. You don't plan for what happens when you die. My grandmother, when she died, she had it all taken care of. Her whole funeral was planned, everything. It was done. We as a family did not have to worry about it. Let me tell you, that was the best gift that she could have ever given us because it gave us time to do what we're supposed to be doing when somebody dies, and that's grieve. And it was great to have that pressure taken off. And it was great to not have to question, like, well, did she want to be buried? She want to be cremated? We didn't have to know her dying wishes. She wrote it all down. It was all done and it was all good. You can't be scared to have that conversation with yourself or your loved ones or whatever, because the greatest gift that you're going to give to them is to have that shit already planned out. And that's just what I say about it. My aunt, recently was dying. This woman was dying, and somehow a miracle happened, and she's still alive, and it's crazy. But anyway, um, the crazy thing about it was that her whole life was contingent on whether or not she stayed hooked up to life support. And we had a big family fight over whether or not she wanted that. Now, granted, she's thankful now that her husband, who was the only person that wanted to keep her on life support, fought so hard to have that happen, because everybody else in the family would have pulled the plug on her and she wouldn't be here anymore. But nobody really knew what she wanted.
Yeah.
And so, have that conversation, because it's very, very important for people in your life to know how you want to spend the rest of your days, and then what to do with you afterwards, because you're not using your body and shit anymore. I mean, at least do that much. But anyway, so that's all the news that I had this week.
Wow. I have two stories I wanted to talk about real quick.
Sure.
Completely different fucking topics. One of them is NASA uses a spacecraft to knock an asteroid off course. So this is a new program that NASA's coming up with. It's called the DART mission, stands for Double Asteroid Redirection Test. And later this week, they're going to launch a small spacecraft that is going to knock an asteroid that's more than 6 million miles away off its course. Now, this asteroid is not headed towards Earth, right? What they're just kind of doing, what they're doing this test for, is to see that if push comes to shove, if this method would work to redirect asteroids away from the planet. So, and as you know, I said that it's DART stands for Double Asteroid Redirection Test. Once it does the first asteroid, it's going to fly over and do the same thing using slightly different methods on a different asteroid as well. So they're getting two test runs out of one spacecraft. But yeah, I think that's kind of interesting. Obviously, extinction through asteroid impact is something that's happened on this planet before. Could very well potentially happen again. And it's nice that they're taking steps to ensure that it doesn't happen, even though this one is pretty much right out of the movie Deep Impact. But still,
Well, right. I mean, I think it's really, it's not that far off topic. Again, I think it's really important to have a plan in place for when and if something like this happens. And that's not something that we've had the advantage of having. Um, so, why not do it? Because what the fuck are we going to do when we have an asteroid heading towards our planet or whatever? We need to be prepared for something like that. So go ahead and do it while it's not a dire situation.
Right. Well, and the frequency of which this has happened. I mean, I don't need to explain this to the audience. Like, clearly, this has happened on our planet before. There's lots of craters and shit. That's how the dinosaurs fucking died, or whatever. Um, Based on the frequency of which this has happened in the past, and the prevalence of kind of underground bunkers and the seed vaults and shit that we know that different governments buy or build for continuity of government. A lot of people think that this is going to happen again. And not only that this is going to happen again, but it's been known for, several years now, maybe even decades, that this is going to happen and that we're taking steps to make sure that at least some of the population or the species in total, or the species, that humanity does survive something like this happening, right?
Sure.
So this is something that you see pop up in a lot of conspiracy theories, that there's an asteroid coming. There ain't shit we can do about it, except build the bunkers for the people we can build bunkers for, and who knows, maybe a program like this will end up saving us all after all. So I want to talk about that. The other thing I wanted to talk about is kind of it's something that's been on my radar for probably, I can say, easily decades now, and it's starting to gain a lot of traction in pop culture. And something it's a Chicago story. It's something I've always known about in Chicago, but the 34th anniversary of it was this week, and I saw lots of people all over the internet, all over Twitter, talking about it. People not from the Midwest, people not from Chicago. So I thought that it would be good to talk about on our show and kind of help spread the story even further. And that is the Max Headroom signal hijacking. So
Okay.
this, do
Yeah.
you know about this story?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so for their audience that doesn't, first let me talk about Max Headroom, because I don't know how, it's kind of this weird thing from the '80s that I don't think people necessarily understand the context of. People might have heard of the signal hijacking, but not have heard of the TV show. Max Headroom was this, like, it was a video DJ. It was like a video, like a music video host on the BBC, and it was played by Canadian actor Matt Frewer. So Matt Frewer was the Lawnmower Man. He was Trash Can Man in the original Stand miniseries. If the Dawn of the Dead remake, he was the guy with the daughter that Ving Rhames shoots before he turns into a zombie, and like the first half of the movie. You would recognize him if you saw him. He's been in some stuff. He was in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. He was the jagoff neighbor dad.
Hmm.
So he got his start as, in the mid 80s, playing this artificial intelligence music, like MTV host. And the concept was that the computers didn't have enough memory to host the full AI for this character, for this like Max Headroom person, and that would make him kind of stutter and spasm. And if you see like footage of them, you'll probably be like, oh, that's what that is, because it was something that it started as this thing for BBC Channel 4. They made a TV movie out of it. It was a TV show on ABC for 2 seasons, and it was something that popped up in a lot more commercials and like tangent like marketing things than it ever was like a cohesive, like coherent like thing, right? Kind of like the California raisins, right? Where everyone knows what the California raisins is, but it's like, no, dude, they were legitimately trying to sell raisins. But you think about the California raisins Christmas special, think about all this other shit
Yeah.
that you saw, but it was literally just this marketing campaign for the California like agricultural council or some shit, right?
Or like the
Max,
Noid.
yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? And Max Headroom was kind of the same thing. It was this weird thing that like just kept happening in the 80s, and they kept using it, and people, it kind of personified the 80s, like this neo-futuristic weird shit, right? Well, the Max Headroom signal hijacking happened November 22nd, 1987, and it happened on a Sunday night here in Chicago. Happened first with WGN, which here in Chicago is Channel 9, but it's also like a nationally syndicated station. Like, I'm sure you have WGN in Ohio and stuff. You know, if you think of the three major networks here in the United States, you have ABC, NBC, and CBS, right? WGN was like the third one, was like the fourth one. And WGN was broadcast out of Chicago. And here it's just kind of a TV show where, like, a station where, like, they show Cubs games and Friends reruns, but everyone got it all over the United States. And then it was also the other station that was affected was WTTW Channel 11, which is our PBS station here. And the first incident happened um, at let's see, what is it, during the 9 o'clock news. It was only for about a minute, and I'm sorry, 28 seconds, and someone was able to hack in, and it was just video of themselves with a Max Headroom mask on, standing in front of a corrugated metal wall, just kind of saying like crazy shit. And then boom, signal gets cut off. WGN was able to overpower the signal, change the transponder channels or whatever, and then override the hijack, right? Well, about 2 hours later, they were able to hack into WTTW Channel 11 during an episode of Doctor Who. And when that happened, they were able to override the signal for a couple minutes and just said a lot of weird shit. Wasn't anything threatening, wasn't anything necessarily cryptic. At one point, the character was spanked by a woman with a fly swatter and just all kinds of weird shit. It was someone just kind of like reveling in the fact that I've hijacked your fucking radio, your TV signal.
Right.
And then eventually they just stopped on their own, right? And this kind of became this like crazy thing that happened. And in the 80s and 70s and 80s, this happened sporadically over the all over the United States, where people would kind of, you know, when you were dealing with satellite dish technology, it was very easy to intercept and very easy to override these signals. And there was the Captain Midnight thing that happened down in Texas, where someone was able to hijack a Texas TV station to do the same thing, Captain Midnight. And lots of bands have been calling themselves Captain Midnight ever since because, you know, it's kind of a nerd fucking joke. But yeah, they never caught the person that did it. And based on where they would have to be to do something like this, they would have to be in direct eye line of both the transmitters for WGN and WTTW. They most likely were living in the Hancock Center at the time, which means they were probably wealthy, which means they were probably somebody that was like an engineer or somebody with a technical background that worked at one of those stations that had potentially lost their job or gotten fired or was just being a jagoff. And I'm sure they probably have an idea who did it. No one's ever come forward since either. And the statute of limitations was up after 5 years. So ever since like the mid 90s, someone could have come forward and said it was me, right?
Right.
No one's done that. But you know, I'm sure based on the amount of equipment and technical expertise and the physical location that you would need to be in to do something like this, I'm sure the FCC and the government figured out who it was and probably said to them, don't ever fucking do this again. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't do anything crazy. They didn't start mass hysteria. They didn't fake an alien invasion. All they did was override the TV stations. But don't do this shit again. And they probably didn't. They probably never come forward since. But it was always really interesting to me. I kind of, it's crazy to think of, you know, when I was younger, I was super involved with public access, because, you know, part of the deal that the cable stations worked out with the FCC is that because cable stations were utilizing the airwaves to broadcast HBO and the Disney Channel and Nickelodeon and Showtime
Right.
and all this shit, they have to set aside a certain amount of equipment and airtime for the general public, and that's why you have these public access stations that pop up. And I always thought it was cool because you could go on there and you can make your own TV show. And I've worked on a couple public access shows over the years. And, you know, the idea that like all of this equipment is like kind of made available to the public was always like super interesting to me. And, you know, it's crazy to think that like back in the 80s, like this stuff was like very much out there. Like, as technically advanced as we think we are now with iPads and stuff like that. Yeah, everyone's got a supercomputer in their pocket, you know, that kind of mentality. Nothing compares to nerds of the 80s and the shit that like a really motivated fucking geek could do with equipment that you bought at Radio Shack. Because you used to be able to do some really fucking cool shit, and the idea that somebody did this back in the day always kind of stuck with me, and now it's gaining popularity. And this whole thing is becoming kind of mythic now. So
What? 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 What do you mean? It was when it happened. I mean, Max Headroom is something I've always heard of, but maybe it's because I'm weird. I don't know. It is kind of a strange thing because like it's always put into the category of like something cryptic or scary and it's not, but it doesn't
right.
really fit anywhere else. I mean, it was just kind of stupid. I mean, it was a big prank. It was dumb.
Well, you have to reconcile the person with the technical ability to do something like this probably doesn't have the same type of brain to come up with something worthwhile to do once they do it. Like he really should have had like a partner that was like, all right, you come up with how we're going to do it. I'll come up with what we do once we do it.
Right, right.
You know what
And
I
he's
mean?
like, I'm just gonna say some dumb shit and get spanked by a fly swatter. Like
Yeah.
that's what they came up with. Like they
Yeah.
had the
Yeah.
freaking airtime, and that's what they did with it. And but it still falls into that category. I mean, maybe we'll do a show one day on like cryptic broadcasts or whatever. And if we do, we'll talk more about it in depth. I mean, I don't think there's much else to say, but that's usually where you find out about the Max Headroom incident is it's just kind of thrown into the mix of like these weird broadcasts, and there have been weird ones out there.
Yeah.
But this was not, like I said, this one wasn't scary at all. There wasn't anything, there wasn't anything scary about it or weird about it. I mean, it was weird, but not in a scary way, just in a stupid, silly, fun way. It was, but kudos to them. I mean, do you think that they'll ever come forward?
You know, I don't who maybe because I mean, like I said, the statute of limitations was over. I think in like '92. It was only 5 years, so definitely they could at this point. Um, and if you think about the fact that it was 34 years ago, if the person that did it, I mean, just based on their behavior, you have to assume they were probably between their 20s and like late 20s, early 30s. Like, you know, they'd be about 60 by now. So I don't know why they wouldn't just say who it was. That's why I wonder if like they were paid a visit. If like, the FCC was able to triangulate like the position of the person that would do it and you say, okay, it was someone in this high rise and now we're going to look at who lives in these 10 apartments and all right, you got a lawyer, you got a veterinarian, and you have a, electrical engineer that worked at WTTW. Like I wonder which one it was, right? Like I'm sure they could have narrowed it down who did it, but you can't prove it. And is it that big of a deal? And do you want there to be a lot of attention drawn on what this person was able to do and how they did it? Or you just want the whole thing to kind of be a mystery and eventually just go away, you
Right.
know? And I think it's interesting. I would like to ask you, how did this popped up on my radar because I'm from here. How did you hear about this for the first time?
Well, I told you. I mean, it's just in the mix of like other weird broadcast. I mean, because when you like weird stuff, it's thrown into that
Right.
weird stuff category. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you exactly when and where and how.
Yeah.
It's very popular on the internet. It's something a lot of people on the internet talk about. So
Yeah, I think I noticed it this year because this is the week. This is the week of the anniversary. I noticed it a lot this week, and that's what made me want to talk about it on the show. Because I saw a guy, actually the Boys Bible Study podcast, which I absolutely adore. That guy's from Pennsylvania and he lives in LA, and he was wearing a Max Headroom thing shirt on, and I was like, what the fuck? First of all, there's clothes. Second of all, like this dude isn't anywhere near here, and he knows about it. And that's when I realized how kind of far this story had spread. But
and I
yeah,
think it's shocking to me that you don't realize that it's a big story.
well, when you live here, it kind of already is, but I just can't imagine people from outside of here having so much interest in it. Just because, like you said, what they did was interesting, but what they did with it wasn't. So it's kind of an interesting story,
Yeah,
but then it kind of really isn't.
and it doesn't really fit anywhere.
Now, doing a lost brought, or however you want to do it, like however you want to frame it, do an episode on this stuff. I still think it's a decent idea because I know that there's been a couple that have been way more like spooky,
Oh yeah.
and the things that they've said, and so I would love to do that because I do think that's a really cool idea.
Oh yeah.
But this one kind of, it's kind of like a sexy one, but it doesn't, it's not that.
If
Not
you think
that
getting
prevalent.
spanked with fly swatters is sexy, I mean, I have a video for you. Um, but I agree with you there. Yeah, this one's not scary, and so it is funny that everybody knows about it. Meanwhile, there are broadcasts that have I mean, can you think of a single other interrupted broadcast that was scary? Just think of one right now. Can you think of one?
Yeah.
Can you?
Yeah, there was one that I think was also from down in Texas, and it was like a warning, and I forget what it said, but I remember reading about it in the 80s. And it was something about, kind of like, you ever heard that Area 51 caller from Coast to Coast?
Oh yeah.
It was like that, but it was in text form, and it was the middle of a TV, it was a TV show or something, and they were able to override the signal, and it was just like a text thing, and it was some kind of warning about something that was going to happen. And it was aliens too. It had something to do with aliens. It might have been just some crank, but it was at least somebody with a little bit more creativity to fuck with people than the Max Headroom thing, which was just kind of like this childish prank.
So it's like, and maybe it's because it's fresh in your brain because you had anticipated talking about the Max Headroom thing for this episode, or you had been reading about it recently. But at any given point in time, just without context, without me having to research it, somebody's like, "Hey, have you heard of the Max Headroom thing?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's that time when that guy put on that Max Headroom mask and got spanked with a fly swatter." And that's really I can't name I can't name a creepy broadcast. Like, yeah, I've read about them, I've heard about them, I've watched videos about them or whatever, but like I can't name one incident, but I can name that one, and I don't know why.
Right.
So I don't know, but yeah, I think that would make for a good episode. Anyway, oh, do we want to talk about this guy?
Yeah, I mean, we came all this way. Let's fuck.
This fucking guy. You are just so about that fucking tonight, huh? Is that-
My days are numbered, Ashers.
Anyway, so again, I say this every week. You guys know what the show's about. But it's only an hour into the episode and we're just now getting to it. But that's okay. Hey, we like to party here. Gotta live your life like Cocaine Bear. Anyway, so Elliot Rodger is also another very popular internet thing, because he mostly was very much on the internet. Well, nobody really knew who the hell he was when he was alive, but he gained a lot of eyes after he did what he did. So Elliot Rodger was this 22-year-old guy who was responsible for the, what was it, Santa Barbara massacre? Isla Vista. Is it? Is it Isla Vista?
Yeah, Isla Vista killings, 2014.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. There's so many names and places. Anyway, so basically he went on this rampage out of nowhere and killed his roommates. He killed his two roommates plus another their friend. Stabbed them a crazy amount of times. And then he went and was trying to break into the sorority, and he couldn't do that, so he shot a couple of girls outside of the sorority. He shot some other people, or tried to shoot some other people. He ran some people over with his car. He got into a shootout with the police, and then eventually shot himself in the head. And that's all terrible and horrible, and that's not great. But what ended up coming out of this afterwards was that he did it because he's a virgin or something. I mean, pretty much that's why he did this. He had a really intense hatred of women, and it ended up showing. So right before he went on this rampage, leading up to this point, he had been posting all these strange videos on YouTube. He started, he was using the internet quite a bit. He was on different forums and things like that. He had a blog. And I mean, basically every video was, why don't women want me? I'm irresistible and I'm the perfect man and I'm just beautiful and great and wonderful. Women just suck. And I know that if you're a woman listening to the show, like you've heard these type of guys, like these type of guys are usually the ones that are in your DMs, right? And I know how it goes. And So a lot of people could kind of relate to this type of individual, and it really shined a light on these type of people, which are male, basically. I mean, are there women out there like this? I'm sure, but I mean, they're pretty much all men. And this kind of culture, which now I'm sure people are familiar with the term incel, and I think that the biggest reason why is because of this situation with Elliot Rodger. And so that's mostly all of it, but we'll talk some more detail. So Pat, you didn't know anything about this, right? When I brought it up to you?
No, I knew about the incel thing. One thing I do want to bring up real quick is that, you talked about women having to do like this is something that's kind of geared towards men, but actually the founder of the incel community was a woman, and what's interesting is that she was based out of Canada, just like this guy was initially. Her name was Anna Foster. Um, I'm sorry, her name's Alana, but she's actually from Toronto, and she started a website called Alana's Involuntary Celibacy Project, and it was for people who were struggling to form loving relationships, and it was just kind of like a message board in the '90s, like the early advent of the internet, and by 2000 she kind of moved away from it. She had found somebody and was like moving forward with her life, and it just kind of kept going and turned into this whole fucking thing. So
Yeah. Well, wait.
so
So let's preface that, and let's say that Alana did not get on there and go, I
no, I
am
know.
here for all the men, and I want you to hate all the women because you guys all deserve to, have all the sex and have all the sandwiches made for you. She did this because she wanted to create, a movement because she was particularly lonely, like a lot of people are, and wanted
Right.
to make something beautiful, and it's turned into a monster,
Well,
and not no fault of her own.
that's the schism that I wanted to kind of illustrate, was that, look, being lonely and being celibate and being so, I guess, as they perceive themselves at least, like, so intellectual that you're out of step with the rest of society, and you can't connect, and personal relationships are hard for you. All of these things do kind of go across gender lines. They go across, people of different races, different backgrounds. There's a lot of fucking nerds out there that have a hard time connecting,
Sure.
and that's not particular to men. But what these guys are doing is kind of takes it above that. So it's back to your original question. Was I familiar with this specific case? No. But, and this is something I've talked about on the show before, I did have a coworker that was very into the incel movement, and I kind and we connected on a lot of these things. You know what I mean? Like, if you, I'm kind of jumping around, just bear with me. But Elliot Rodger had posted a manifesto online prior to going on this rampage, and it's this 143-page document. I think it's 140. It's fucking long, and it basically details his whole entire life. Okay,
Yeah.
and it's very easy to find. It's called Elliot Rodger Manifesto: My Twisted World, and it was it's currently being hosted online at several different places. The place I found is being hosted by the New York Daily News, so you can see this in PDF form. It's 141 pages. You can read it. It talks all about his upbringing, all about his childhood, and eventually gets to why he plans on doing what he's doing. And this is something that he posted, just prior to his rampage. So, I'm reading this, and I realize that me and this guy have a lot of shit in common. All right, and me and this guy have a lot of shit. He has a lot of shit in common with a lot of my friends and the type of social circles that I travel in. Like, I don't hang out with football players. I don't hang out with athletes. I don't hang out with the student body president. I wasn't the most popular kid in high school. I was kind of an outcast. I was kind of a nerd. I was in honors classes, and I fucking played video games and watched anime, you know. And but we didn't do shit like this, and it never and things never went in this direction. And you start to kind of pick things apart and say, well, where does where do you go from listening to Rammstein and wearing a black trench coat to actually being the Columbine kids? Like, where does that happen? Because a lot of people in the media would like to attribute it to specific media choices. Like, oh, it's because they watched these movies and played video games. Well, no, I do that, and I don't do this. Well, it's because they were really into like nerd culture and all this stuff. And it's like, well, no, because I am, you know. And I think what it comes down to is, especially in Rodger's case, he was an elitist. He was spoiled. He had fucking filthy rich parents. He lived in California, and I'm sure that there was a whole lot of societal pressures that come with that. I have a friend who's listening to the show right now, probably named Ashley. Hey, Ashley, who's from California, and like, we get along and shit. But sometimes the shit she tells me about what her life was like in high school and stuff, it's nothing compared to what I had to deal with when I was in high school, right? The pressures to look and be a certain way in that kind of environment is more than I ever knew going to an all boys school on the south side of Chicago, right? And he grew up in kind of this, like, he was an interracial kid growing up in this very, very upper class world surrounded by white rich like skater kids, and that kind of led to a lot of his alienation, was not being able to connect with them, and that just kind of grew over time.
Well, and I mean, so obviously, one thing that comes up with the Elliot Rodger thing is like, obviously, it's beyond just some douchebag. Like, he's not just being a douchebag. He's got a lot. He had a lot of undiagnosed mental issues,
Yeah.
and they thought that he possibly could have been autistic, and maybe that played a part in him not being able to connect, or he could have had a personality disorder, and that could have played a part in him not being able to connect, or whatever. It doesn't matter. It was never, by the time it was finally kind of really looked at and taken seriously, it was already too late because he was an adult. And, his parents knew that there was something wrong with him. They weren't, it's not like they didn't know. I mean, there's a reason why, the night before this happened, he had emailed with a manifesto. He didn't post online. He posted a video, which was pretty much a very short version of the manifesto that he typed up. But he had emailed that to his life coach, to his parents, to a couple of friends, and things like that. And they rushed over and they went and they drove. I mean, they were living in separate towns, and they drove over to the town and they tried to find him, and so they knew that something was wrong with him. And this was a long time in the making. Now, I'm not saying that the parents could have done anything. Again, they couldn't have. Elliot was an adult at this point. But they just kind of missed the signs with him growing up. I mean, in hindsight, the dad now knows that his child was relentlessly bullied and didn't know that initially. He says, and that's just all we know. He knew that he didn't have a bunch of friends or anything, but he didn't understand the extent of it, is my understanding. And, when you're a parent, things like that can very easily happen. And especially when you're a parent to the type of parents that he had, because, like, again, his dad is a director.
Yeah, and his mom was a nurse on movie sets and
Yeah.
got him. He was at the premiere for like episode 1. Was friends with George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and shit.
Right. So
You
he
know,
already didn't have a normal, I can say that right now. He didn't have a normal upbringing, compared to everyday America. I mean, he already
right?
had, a separate disadvantage. I mean, his parents were busy people. And, and his stepmom, I mean, she was an actress, and so this was already just not a good thing. He really needed somebody who was paying really close attention to his life, and he just didn't have that. Um, but again, I'm not saying it's the parents' fault. Ultimately, when Elliot Rodger did this, he was an adult, and plenty of people grow up with absent parents and don't go on rampages. So, that's not what I'm saying here. But, it's just one of those things where it was a perfect formula to create this monster. And this is where we got here. Now I'll tell you one thing that I always thought about the Elliot Rodger thing, because I've been familiar with this case for a long time, because there was so much documented evidence for it, and kind of into the mind of a killer, because he did make a lot of YouTube videos talking about his stuff. He did type up a lot of stuff online, and he did write this manifesto. He was very vocal and very open. I mean, that's the thing, like, he was posting these videos on YouTube, and it was red flag after red flag, but nobody was watching the videos. It was just some dude on YouTube, so people that
Mhm.
have maybe like 5 subscribers on YouTube pumping out these weird ass videos. His shit didn't go viral. Nobody knew who he was. But that was just kind of one of those things. But one thing that I always noticed about him, he wasn't a bad looking guy. Like,
I've I've done a lot more with a lot less.
right,
I'm not saying he's better looking than me, but it was interesting to like read his definite like the whole Chad thing and realize that like these guys think if like according to their definition, like I'm a fucking Chad, which is just like nuts. I don't. There's so much to this incel stuff that I think like I could just talk. I mean, the Elliot Rodgers case is what it is, but I think the incel thing specifically, like, there's so much to unpack because they're putting the blame literally everywhere except for themselves and
yes,
and their inability to connect with other people either because of mental illness or they were just raised to be fucking pricks. And I think that's what it comes down to. Now maybe there's people that are mentally ill, maybe like you said the undiagnosed autism or something like that. That could definitely be a factor. But I think there's also a lot of elitism and there's a lot of like thumbing their fucking nose and just sitting there thinking that they're better. Like, don't get me wrong, man. I thought I was better than most of the kids in fucking high school, but I was. But I still had a lot of friends. I still had kids that I got along with and shit. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it was like the nerds and the punk rock kids. We were cooler than the fucking jocks, but like that didn't just because you're cooler than the fucking football team, that doesn't mean that everyone in the world's a fucking asshole and you should just indiscriminately drive a fucking truck down the street. You know what I mean? Like
right,
you learn to target your hatred a little bit, and I think that's what happens when you're genuinely being bullied, when you're genuinely being fucked with. You understand that kid that like makes conversation with you in algebra class or sometimes sit next to you in lunch, he's not bad. It's that other kid that book checks you into the locker or pisses on you in the fucking gym class shower. He's the fucking asshole. And you start to realize, not when you're really being fucked with by people, you realize that there's good guys and bad guys. It's kind of like the way that Nazi is a blanket term today, and people forget that no, there actually really used to be Nazis, and that calling someone a Nazi because they're kind of strict or they're fucking like, you know what I mean, like that diminishes the fact that no, there actually used to be Nazis,
there
right?
still are Nazis.
Right. But I, you know what I mean. I think
I
that
know
it's
what you
kind of
mean.
it's thrown
Yeah.
around a little bit too much, and I think that's what these kids tend to do. That like hate the world. It's like no. If you really were being fucked with, you'd really realize that there's it's only about 15% of the world that are pieces of shit. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that it's 15% that are pieces of shit. 70% are just fucking whatever. They only looking out for themselves and they're pretty apathetic and they have good days and bad days and they're just fucking NPCs, right? And then you have the other 15% that are really active good guys, you know? But the whole world isn't necessarily filled with fucking just chaff and bullshit. It's
Right.
and that's why I think like this kid, like how bad was he really fucked with if he thinks that everyone's the fucking blame? Like, no, he was just
Well, I mean, so he says that he says that sex was, discovering sex was the worst thing that ever happened to him, because he ended up becoming obsessed with having it. And because of that obsession, then it in turn made him do weird things, like talk like constantly talk about, like I said, the guy's cute. But like, if how he talks to women is how he talks in his YouTube videos, because like he legit would be like, "I'm beautiful. How can you not want? I am the supreme gentleman." That's what he would say. Who the fuck would want to fuck that? Nobody. Nobody's gonna want to have sex with you if that's how you talk about yourself. Now, maybe that stems from, it's obviously some type of false confidence, because he didn't have that. He didn't have any confidence, and that's why he got fucked with in school, right? And that's usually what happens. And, not that, I understand. I'm not shaming anybody for not having any confidence. But he created this really, false sense of confidence in himself, and then somehow translated that in his mind to entitlement, like he was due, you know, I guess a girlfriend. I mean, as weird as it sounds, I do genuinely think that for some reason he did become obsessed with this. And that, I don't know, and then he went nuts for some reason. A lot of these people that knew Elliot Rodger and talk about him, because I watched countless interviews of the family members and people in his life and people that grew up with him. One thing that they all maintained over and over and over again was that he was very, very lonely. Like, there's the kids that get fucked with, and then there's the kids that the bullies don't even bother fucking with.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's like they just are such a wallflower. I mean, you don't even, I wouldn't even say that much. They're just a speck in society. They don't stand out. There's nothing extravagant about them. There's no interaction. And I feel like that was definitely Elliot Rodger's biggest issue, is that he was a so insignificant, and he felt that way. And the guy's a douchebag, but I I can relate on the loneliness front. I can completely understand, because that shit, loneliness is enough to drive you insane. And it did in this case. Now, he definitely should have worked on himself and not blamed everybody else. But there is only so much work that you can do on yourself before you're like, you do all the work on yourself, and then you look around and you go, well, fuck, I'm still alone. It didn't change anything. Um, and then that reality is hard to deal with. Then you either decide you're going to continue and just live, because what other choice do you have, or you're going to go fucking drive your BMW into some people and shoot some people. I mean, I don't know. I'm not justifying it at all. Obviously that's wrong. But I can kind of understand where he's coming from, and that's sad. It makes me very sad. It makes me horribly sad for him. But I don't
Yeah,
know.
I can't. I don't know. I can't. I mean, I think I think you touched on something really important, is that when you're being bullied, and I was bullied in I I was bullied in high school, but it was more of there was just a combative situation between like the punk rock kids and the white power kids, and me and my friends were the obviously the punk rock kids, and we would fight with the white power kids, and we all wore leather jackets and they all wore bomber jackets, and we all kind of like the Business and Dropkick Murphys, but for different reasons. And like it just was it was like the Sharks and the Jets, I think, but or not even that, but it was, there were teams, and even if we were kind of seen as like the scumbag trash ball kids, we were the scumball trash ball kids at an all boys college prep high school. Like, how bad were we really? Like, what kind of scumbags were we really? Our parents were paying $13,000 a year in tuition. Like,
True.
it was it, but that's something that honestly I realized by like junior year, was that I actually had a lot of friends, and there was kids that were like, that used to be on the JV football team, because football teams, like when it's JV, there's like 100 kids, right? And then when they get to varsity, then there's probably only 30 or 40 or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that number really gets dwindled down. So, freshman, sophomore year, there was a lot of kids that were on the football team. I'd say like, half of my graduating class were football players. But come varsity time, they were, later on they weren't. And now they didn't have this identity anymore. And they were just kind of kids, and they weren't wearing their football jerseys on Friday because of the game on Saturday, or you know what I mean? And it was different for them. And you kind of, and as someone that paid attention to these things, that was naturally empathetic, like I felt bad for him because I realized like I still had my friends. I was a part of something that was legitimate. These guys kind of were just had a default group of friends because they were all football players, but that ran out halfway through for most of them, you know. And they would go to parties and they would be with all these kids, but they didn't really know each other. Whereas I would spend the night at my buddy's house and we would watch anime and stay up, and then Bill's mom would make us breakfast, and I you know what I mean, like I was closer, I was actually close with these people. They were like family to me. My mom knew all my friends and I knew all their parents and shit. And yeah, for us being these scumbag outcasts. And then when senior year rolled around and Columbine happened my senior year in high school, everyone looked at us like we were the next powder keg. And I had meetings with like the dean of students, like me and my friends. They brought us in because they were legitimately afraid that we're checking in with you guys. We know you guys are a little different. We know you guys are the goth kids. We're like, no, we're fucking punks. What are you talking about? Like, no one here listens to the fucking Cure, like, wow, we just want to check in with you guys. Like, is everything okay? Like, yeah, when we know you fight with some of the Mount Greenwood kids, and like, if whatever, it was like, it was different. And I realized, like, wow, like, to the outside looking in, we look like Columbine. We look like the Trenchcoat Mafia, but we're not,
Yeah.
and we're actually way more sound emotionally than a lot of these other kids. And I actually have a lot more friends than somebody that was just a football player freshman, sophomore year. So that's why, like, a lot of these incels blame where they're at on the fact that, like, their intelligence or their interests or the fact that they're not athletic. And I just got to kind of be like, dude, that's got nothing to do with it. It's got nothing to do with it. And it's some other X factor that I think that they haven't picked up on yet. And even us on the outside looking in on them, we still haven't really figured it out yet either. And I think undiagnosed mental illness is a huge part of it. It's a huge part of it. But this violent component too, the radicalization of the loneliness, that's something I wonder if that is a cultural movement. I wonder if you know what I mean. And when doing my research on incels, I think that that's something that the FBI kind of leans towards too a little bit. You know what I mean? Like they're very sensitive about this stuff now because they realized it could be the deciding factor on whether or not some lonely fucking nerd becomes violent and acts out against innocent people.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's one thing to like have a bully, make you feel like you're worthless and like a piece of shit, and like you don't want to live anymore. But like, how worthless and shitty do you feel when even the bullies don't give a shit to make you feel that way? So it is a very daunting. I was never bullied. I never had that issue. I always had lots and lots of friends. I always talked to everybody. Um, my problem, I guess, wasn't so much that like I've ever had an issue with people talking to me because I mentioned that I very much relate to this lonely thing, and I do.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not because I have a lack of abundance of people, but that's about it. I have a lot of acquaintances. I have very, very few people that I actually sit down and welcome into my psyche. It just doesn't happen. And vice versa. I've never had a single person in my life ever that I am free to have expectations with, and or have felt like I am free to have expectations with. And then as soon as I do get that kind of comfort, something happens.
Mhm.
So I understand. I understand. And is that, is it somewhat my fault? Well, yeah, sure. I could probably just, have expectations with people. I mean, do I need to figure out why I have that issue? Probably, yeah. But am I going to go kill a bunch of people because of it? Absolutely not. But you definitely do get stuck in your own head a lot. When you're dealing with this type of thing. And it's a very scary, very sad thing. And I guess that's why, like, for me, I really feel for those type of people because, it's just a whole different level of sad and sorrow when you realize that you're in a room full of people and you're still lonely, or you're hitting your goals in life, and you're doing the work, but you still have that void. And I think that Elliot Rodger still very much has always had that void, and he just did not know how to solve it, and it drove him insane. And that's what I think about it. Is it because of the incels and this, that, and the other? Well, I'm sure it didn't help that he had a bunch of dude bros egging him on. You know, he found comfort in that, at least. He clinged to that community because he felt like it was something that he could relate to and that they could relate back to him. But it only lasts so long. It's only a band-aid, because before that point, and people have talked, we haven't really talked about like his history or his upbringing, or anything that he's been through, which I don't know, doesn't matter. I'm not sure. He had a pretty uneventful life for the most part.
Yeah.
But for a long time in high school, he was really addicted to World of Warcraft, and he seemed to do better that way. Now, I don't know why he stopped doing that. But for a minute, that seemed to be the Band-Aid, and from there, that's probably where he discovered, I mean, I'm not going to typecast here. I'm nothing against people that play things like that. But that's probably where he discovered this incel community. And, then he got into that, and he started having the influence of more violent ideas, and, maybe it just evolved and it morphed into what it was. I really don't know. But, again, he wasn't conventionally unattractive. Okay. He wasn't poor. He wasn't, you know, he had all these makings to be very successful, but there was just a piece that just was missing.
Well, it was connecting with girls. He didn't know how
I
to
agree with
talk
that.
to girls, and
Yeah.
that's where it comes from. Because like you
Right.
talk about feeling lonely, like I completely agree with that. I dealt with that a lot too. I had friends, but it was never enough.
I think everybody feels like that sometimes.
Yeah, no, but I mean, for me, it was. I mean, but what's interesting for me is that I think I used fucking as a way to cure that. You know what I mean? And
Yes, exactly.
if you took that away from me and I wasn't able to fuck, like, oh my god, I would have gone.
You might go crazy, right?
I would have, but that's why I learned to fuck. Like, come on, like that was part of it. I guess it was like I at least had that survival instinct in me.
It's a sink or swim situation,
Yeah,
and Elliot Rodger chose to sink.
well, it's because he didn't, and so then I rewind the clock back, and I think like because this is something that like, and I'm not, I know I'm talking about myself personally a lot in this episode, but it's only because I connect a lot with this guy, and on paper, me and him have a lot in common, but the really important stuff we don't. So
Yeah, sure.
I'm trying to figure out how like 7 out of 10 things can match, and try to use that to shed light on those other three. And like, I never fucking went on a murder rampage. I never will. I'm not like that.
You didn't
And
sue your roommate because he stole your candles, or charged your roommate with theft because he stole your candles?
no, I'm never that petty. And if anything, I was the roommate stealing candles. And I also, I never killed anyone, and I fucked a lot. So it's like, I think that maybe, you know, he didn't learn to fuck when I did, or maybe I got lucky. There's part of me that thinks that too, because I remember when my first girlfriend, I lost my virginity when I was 15, and when I never thought before then that I would ever have sex. I was convinced that I would die a virgin, and then I met Leslie, and we started dating, and actually she was dating a friend of mine, and I stole her away from him, which was a terrible thing to do, but I did it anyway because she was DTF. And what can I say?
You
That's how
probably
bad I
should.
wanted it.
Yeah.
I had to close that gap. I was not going to get Elliot Rodger. I was fucking like, dude, this is not going to be me. I don't care who I got to stab in the back to fucking get this pink. It's going to happen. And that's what I did. And then when we broke up, because inevitably she was fucking nuts. When we broke up, I never thought I'd fucking ever had anyone sleep with me ever again. Never. I was like, that was a fluke. We're broken up now. I'm never ever gonna get laid again. And then I started dating Stephanie, my second girlfriend. And once again, I thought, Jesus, this is just like the only one that's ever gonna sleep with me. And then we broke up a year later, and I started dating my third girlfriend, whose name I will not fucking follow this podcast with. And it wasn't really until I was about 20 and I had been with maybe 5 or 6 girls that I convinced myself that I was probably going to be okay and that I would meet other women in life and that I wasn't going to die alone. But up until that point, I never, like, and especially before I started fucking, I was convinced I was going to die alone and die a virgin. I just fucking knew it because that's the way I felt inside of me. That's the societal pressure because girls, you know, a lot of people start pairing up in like 6 and 7. My son has a fucking girlfriend now and he's in fucking 5th grade. I never had any of that. I never, this grammar school, I had braces and glasses and I was fucking a foot taller than everyone else. And I watched Beavis and Butthead and people thought I was a mutant. You know what I mean? And it really, it wasn't until I was about 20 and I started playing in bands and shit and like bleaching my hair and fucking being whatever that I started to kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
And I get that maybe like Elliot just never fucking had that. He never had that.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll even say, I mean, I know this might come as a surprise to anybody, but yeah, any breakup that I've ever had in my life, I'm like, nobody's gonna want me ever again. And
Right?
it's me, you guys. Have you seen me? I mean, you know, we all feel like that sometimes, but you know, then you just kind of, I mean, you kind of pick the shit up and you just kind of keep trucking, you know.
Now, well, all you got to do, and this is why he hates you so much, is because all you have to do is like take a picture of yourself, post it on Instagram, go take a shit, come back, and have 60 different likes. You know what I mean? Like, dude, I go through this. Let me tell you something. I go through this being your co-host all the fucking time. Like, look at how many friends you have on Clubhouse versus how many friends I have on Clubhouse. Like, I am forever in your fucking shadow. Now, I'm cool with it. Like, I have made my peace with it. I'm glad you're taking me along for the ride. I am more than happy to be here, and I will play fucking second fiddle to you anytime. But this idea that like he had about how unfairly balanced it is, he's not wrong. It's just that's the way the world goes. I can open jars that you can't. Like there's an ebb and flow to it.
I mean,
whatever.
right,
I have upper body strength.
You know, if we're up for an intellectual, you know, job, then most likely you're going to get it. And I'm, you know what I mean? Like you got wins and losses.
I'm not complaining at all. No. I'm not complaining at all. But I'm just saying, like, yeah, it's a little. You'll always get more attention than me. Always. That's just whatever. Fine. I am. You got to believe me when I say this. I have no ill will against that whatsoever. It's totally cool. But you know. You never have to, like you said, you never have to really doubt your self-worth or like your attractiveness for that long because you can get validation like that, you know.
Well, yeah, within like the week I start fucking somebody else. So I mean, you know, that's just the way it be sometimes. But I mean, anyway, the point is just, you know, again, at some point you don't get stuck in the hole, you know, you dig yourself out of it and you know, you continue forward. That doesn't always happen for people. So, I mean, obviously, it doesn't happen for people like Elliot Rodger, who instead of deciding to dig himself out of the hole, he was just going to go ahead and dig himself into the grave, as well as some other people around him. So,
yeah,
you know, and that was just kind of, you know, I guess I don't know, it's what he decided to do, I suppose. I don't know. But you know, it's really easy to look at something like this and just look at the surface and go, oh, yep, that's incels for you. But there really is a lot more to it that I think people should, you know, dig around with. I mean, do I, you know, am I speaking up for incels? No, fuck those guys. You know, they're awful and they're not good people and they don't get laid because of it's their own fault. You know, I understand learning how to connect with people is not an easy task. I'm not saying that. You know, we're talking to an audience right now and every single one of us here can say that at least one point in time in our life, we've had an issue connecting with people. We're all fucking weird, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And so, you know, we can all relate to that part. You know, but instead of thinking that the whole world owes it to us to, well, I mean, we just kind of stopped and we're like, whatever, I'm just fucking weird and I accept it. You know, we kind of stay within our own lane and, you know, instead of like, most of the time I notice what these incels do is then they start like, they're shooting their shot way out of their league, first of all.
Yeah.
And, as shitty as it is to say, because yes, okay, great, wonderful, looks don't matter, ageism shouldn't be a thing. Not that you should date minors or anything. I'm not saying that. But things like that shouldn't matter on the surface. Come on, guys, they do. They do. And you can learn to love somebody. I understand that, but like you still have that influence. Let me tell you something. I dated this guy once and he was really ugly. And I dated him knowing that he was really ugly because I swear to God, because I thought that he was going to be nice to me. Right. And so after going through heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak, I thought, well, fuck it. I'm going to date one of those really ugly, nice guys. And he fucking cheated on me.
Yeah, you fuck ugly dudes, and I
because I think he's gonna be nice to me.
I don't want to let the cat out of the bag with that one, but like that's something that you've told me in the past,
and they're still not nice to me.
Yeah, you'll be like, I fucked this guy and he was ugly, but I figured, what the hell, and hey, you know what? I can say the same thing, and I'm not going to because it sounds completely different coming from my mouth than yours.
Yeah.
But I will say this. There is a line in 40-Year-Old Virgin where where the coworker played by what's his name, Romy, he was on the first 2 seasons of Weeds. I hate to say it, but it's the black guy, the black bald guy that works with him at Best Buy, and he's talking about how you gotta, you're setting yourselves too high. You gotta find some hood rats, and you gotta go through about 20 hood rats because you're gonna be terrible at sex, and then once you do that, then you can elevate yourself up. And I think that that's the same advice that I would give some of these dudes: is just get anything. Just get anything to get the numbers in there, and then once you do that, then you learn a little bit of game, you learn a little bit of this, you learn a little bit of that, and then because think about it, 40-Year-Old Virgin, that dude's an incel, but why is that story not? Why isn't he angry and super fucking violent and crazy? You know what I mean? Well, because it's Steve Carell. It's like no, because like. I don't know. Maybe it is because it's just a movie. I guess if that should happen in real life, the dude would be driving on sidewalks. But like,
yeah, fucking bitter.
I don't know. Yeah, I gotta say, like, they do. That's something I've noticed too. Is that some of these incels are very, very critical of women, and definitely don't know their fucking target range.
Yeah.
And even then, you should, dude. You gotta always there's always a reacher and there's always a settler. This my wife explains to me all the time. And there's something to be said about not being the reacher and being the settler. And I think my advice to incels would be to just don't be the reacher. Like, just, you're starting out, like, go find some, whatever, and just make it happen and get it going. And then, get yourself uncumbering so that you can think clearly for fucking half a minute, and then you can figure out your next move, but you need that first job on your resume,
And yeah, and I absolutely agree with that. We probably shouldn't have told everybody that I fuck ugly dudes, but
I mean, hey, they're gonna DM you anyway. That's the
I'm just
thing.
saying.
It doesn't matter. Now they're gonna now they'll have even more fucking purpose. Or
I
now they
fuck
think that you
ugly
owe it
dudes
to
with
them.
big dicks and money. So if you don't have all three of those things,
it's the trifecta. It's the Triforce. You got to get
exactly.
all three.
So, but no, I mean, yeah, and so this probably gives the ugly dudes hope. But like, the reason why I fuck you guys is not because it's not because. It's just because I expect you to be nice to me, and if you're not being nice to me, then I'm not gonna keep fucking you. And so, you gotta have that too. At least you gotta have some couth about your goddamn selves. You can't just be like, oh, you owe it to me because I'm a man and you're a woman. Like that's never gonna happen. I'll tell you that right now. That doesn't happen that way.
And you know what? Let me say something to counterpoint to that. I do not fuck ugly girls. You know why? Because they're all beautiful. And fellas, that's how you do it.
And there you go. That is how you do it. That's exactly
how you do it.
I agree with that too. Yeah.
I've never fucked an ugly girl my whole entire life. Every single one of them have been fucking gorgeous.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. That is how you do it. That's why Pat's married. We got married.
I had some jokes about that actually. I have two types of past sexual.
Are you gonna get in trouble?
No, this is good.
Okay.
I have two types of past sexual partners: those that are like, "Oh my god, pedo could fuck for hours," and others that are like, "Oh my god, pedo lasts like 5 seconds." And the 5 seconds girls are usually Italian and Hispanic. Seriously, my wife is the, my life is the same way. It's part of the reason I always joke about her never wanting to sleep with me. It's because it only lasts 30 seconds, and she's so fucking hot, and she married that. So that's that. I have some other
Right.
shit about me sleeping with all types of
Well, that's what I'm
nationalities.
saying. Women like when you praise them. I don't care what woman you are. We
There's no
like
bigger
that
praise
shit.
that you can give a woman by lasting 5 seconds. They may
Okay,
be
yes
kind
and
of
no.
they may be frustrated, but they also feel kind of good about themselves.
Not me. I will never sleep with you again. If it's 5 seconds, I'm like, oh, and I'll
It
tell
doesn't
every
matter. It's
fucking body.
hey, fine, fuck it. All right,
I'll
later.
tell everybody. I'll be like, listen, this guy just don't. I'll tell all my girlfriends, like, no.
That hey, that's the one reason because you never want to discount the recommendation. Although a lot of times girls aren't going to sleep with guys that their friends slept with anyway, so it doesn't matter. The
Oh, you
fact that
haven't
like
met me and my friends.
no, I haven't. No, I haven't. I had an angiogram instead. Trust me. Uh, I would have. But yeah, I mean, anyway, I was just fucking. You were saying your friends are. I'll back off of that one.
I warn, yeah, I warn people. I let it go the first time. The first time, okay, I get it, it's exciting, but the second time, no.
Yeah.
You need to practice some meditation or something. You need to get that shit under control. Think about your baseball or something. Anyway, I don't know how this turned into this.
Yeah, you never
But
want to come out of the box. That the 5 second move is something that you save for the second or third. The first one, you're right. You always want to send them home with a story that they're going to go and sing your praises from the mountaintops, and then later on you can like let pull the 5 second maneuver.
well, sure, well, it makes sense. I mean, everybody's got the quickie. You got the quickie sometimes. You got to squeeze in the quickie, and that's fine. But anyway, I'm not. This isn't the sex talk show. Again is, but again isn't. Back to this horrific event with Elliot Rodger and all these people that he killed.
Right.
That's what you got to do when you know you're not going to last very long. Just start thinking about Elliot Rodger and how great he thinks he is. Because let me tell you, that shit will dry you up like the Sahara. He's a terrible person. I mean, he is a terrible person. I feel bad for him. I feel bad for who he was before he made this decision to do this, because there was a turning point, at some point in his life. It's not like he walked out of the womb and decided, I'm going to grow up and massacre people. Um, Something, and it's a slow change, but he did wake up one day and go, you know what, I'm going to do this. And he took the time to carefully plan this out and put it into motion. And we see that in all of the evidence leading up to it. I mean, he went to a shooting range and, tried out different guns and bought a couple and wrote about them and how that, how they would be used and how they would be good and why they would be good for using it for killing people. And he had this whole plan in place in order to do this. And so it was a couple of months in the making. And in that couple of months during his planning stages, do you think he ever stopped and was like, maybe I'm not going to do this? Do you think he ever thought about it? Because it doesn't sound like he thought about it.
Yeah, I mean,
It
this is
sounds
where
like he was pretty he had decided.
yeah, this is where it all falls apart for me, is when you decide to indiscriminately commit acts of violence against people. You know what I mean? Like nothing makes sense at this point. This is when mental illness has to come into play, because there's no other rational explanation for any of this.
Right. Right. And I mean, because he couldn't connect with people. We know that. We know that's his big issue, and I agree with that. But, he just totally, totally disconnected from just reality in general, in order for this to be the way it was. You have to. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, can you imagine planning out months and months and months of planning something like this? No.
No, I mean to wake up every day and to think that you're gonna. How do you function in society when you know that this is coming?
What it's going to be,
Unless
right?
it's some weird compartmentalization where like, yeah, I'm gonna go to work today, but then in the back of my head I know that like, oh, in 3 weeks that's the day on the calendar when I'm gonna go do this. And it's just, yeah, this is where this is where the mental illness component comes in.
Right.
Because everything up to this point you can talk about, you can rationalize, you can kind of put yourself in his shoes, and you can say, well, I identify with this part, I identify with that part, high school was shitty for me too, yada yada yada. But this is where most of us are just like, I don't get it. And that's because this is how we know that there was some undiagnosed mental illness at play. You know, this level of
Yeah.
planning for this type of act, that in response to what he was going through, like, yeah, it's, if it was random, if he had picked up a knife and just went fucking ape shit, well, even that would fucking show that he's crazy, you know. But at least that was snapping, that was in the moment. This is sustained planning, you know.
Yeah.
Sustained
That's
preparation.
calculated, right? Yeah. And you know, that's well, I mean, I agree. You know, I think heat of the moment crimes are definitely more you know, heat of the moment. I mean, they're not, I think that shows more sanity than something like this. So I don't know. I mean, you know, again, he was a bad dude. You know, I don't want him coming to any of my parties. So just saying. That's that's my takeaway for it. I don't.
Would you now, if you knew somebody like this in real life, IRL, would you sleep with them just to kind of help them get it, you know, to bring them back down?
Absolutely not. No, I would not. No, he can hire a sex worker and sleep with them.
That's what I don't go to either. Like, dude.
Right. Like,
this was before they fucking shut down Backpages too. This was back in the day. Like, it was really easy to get pussy online back then. Like, I don't know what this guy.
Right. I mean, no, I wouldn't. Because you know, I already said. I mean, the guy was a douchebag, and I like people that make me feel good about myself. I like I thrive on validation, and this was not. You know, Elliot Rodger would actually need somebody that I need. Right. We
he was probably too good looking for you. You're like, I fucked weirder looking guys than that, whose parents made less money. This guy like could have got you on the set of Indy 5. Like, you could have been watching fucking Chris Pratt making an Indiana Jones movie, picking his pubes out of your teeth. Fucking.
I don't always fuck ugly guys. I have before. You know, and I know.
Whatever.
But,
hey, all mine have been beautiful, right? All mine have been beautiful.
You know, but no, I mean, no, like I said, him and I go after the same kind of person. Like, he would need somebody that constantly validates his existence, and that's the kind of person that I go after. I don't, you know.
Yeah, I think
so,
yeah.
Some people are givers, you know, and those people are the type of people that I typically, not that I'm not also a giver, but you know, he just didn't even know that about himself, I don't think.
I don't think he knew what he wanted, because you don't really know what you. I'm one of those people that I only know what I want. I know more what I don't want than what I want. And the only reason you know what you don't want is because you had it and you're like, that didn't fucking work.
Yeah.
So I literally, that's I have to do everything through process of elimination. It's the only way that I get anywhere in life. I have to do it. It has to fail miserably, and I go, okay, I won't do that again. But if it's there to do, I got to do it first before I fucking, you know, piss on it. So like, yeah. He, I think, and when you have zero experience, you don't even fucking know. He had no idea. No idea. And I was talking to my wife about this earlier. 22 isn't like, she was like, now she's, I don't want to be telling her fucking stories, but she's kind of like us, I guess you'd say.
Okay.
To where like 22 was like later than we got started, but like in the grand scheme of things, it's not that late.
I mean, I got divorced at 22, so.
No, you were like, well, I was.
So I don't know what it's like to be 22 in a normal, you know.
22 isn't incredibly like ridiculously like serial. In this case, it was serial killer like virgin late, but there's other people. There's people that are perfectly functional in the world that lost their virginity at 22 or later.
And I buy that. Not every single one of my friends lost their virginity in high school. You know, or middle school or elementary school. But that was kind of a really shitty joke, and I apologize for that. But you know, my point is that I know a lot of people that didn't have sex until they were an adult, until they were in their 20s.
Yeah.
You know, and most of that is just because, like, you're in your 20s. A lot of people still live at home at that age. You're not going to bring people back to your parents' house, and then the person that you're dating, you're not going to go to their parents' house. And I mean, it's not, that's not. I would agree, I guess, for a normal person. Yeah, that's probably about correct. I'm surprised, but again, at the way that he conducted himself around people, he couldn't connect with them, like you said, like we're saying. Then that's a big problem. That was his issue, and that's why he didn't get laid. It wasn't because he wasn't attractive, and I'm sure the guy had good things about himself. I'm sad that I waited till the end to share this, but did you know that he saved his brother from drowning?
No.
Yeah, he saved his little brother from drowning, which was really fucked up because he had planned to kill his little brother and his stepmom. But yeah, he did. His little brother was drowning one day, and he saved. It was just him and his little brother. I mean, he could have pulled like an Ed Gein and just not, let him fucking drown, um, and blamed it on the drowning. But he didn't. He saved him. So he was human at some point. I think that's obvious, but I don't know. I don't have anything else to add about it, I guess. It's just, again, it's a terrible thing. It's something that you guys now know of. If you find yourself hating women, like, get help for that. I hear a lot. Even like some of my really woke male friends, like sometimes they still have this thing about themselves where they will like, and especially when it's me, right? Because I'm very much, very proud to be a woman, and I want to empower other women. And in the field that I'm in, I'm making waves as far as women, representation goes. And some of the guys that I know still will be like, well, it's just because, you're a woman or whatever. And like, that's a slippery slope. Now, granted, we're all kind of used to stereotypes and typecasting and all those things. And we slip sometimes, right? We're human. We're not perfect. But like, if you genuinely like start resenting women, like, you need to get help for that, because you don't want to end up like Elliot Rodger, who never got laid at the age of 22. So
Right. And everything's just a matter of perspective.
it
In,
is.
in in the heterosexual community, you're seen as an incel, but in the homosexual community, you're seen as fresh chicken. So if you're striking out with the ladies, go find yourself a chicken hawk and let some 4-year-old queen blow you, and it'll take the edge off, and it'll hold you over until you figure shit out. And don't be fucking homophobic and a dick about shit. Just it's figure it out, man. It's not that hard. You don't got to kill people over it. You'll figure it out. It's just
I'll, I'll
expand your horizons.
I will design a T-shirt for the merch shop that says fresh piece of chicken, and you can wear that to the gay bars.
It's just fresh chicken. Fresh chicken. Oh yeah,
fresh chicken. They'll know.
All the chicken hawks will come running.
Oh yeah. Well, what a great note to leave that off on. So anyway, there's that, guys. We'll keep you in the loop about what is happening with Mr. Pat here. And kind of what's happening with the show. Again, plans are still going forward, so we'll still be here every Wednesday. Yeah, that's all. So see you guys next Wednesday.